Wow, that's exciting. Thanks, Bob. Maine, this is the first year that Maine has actually participated in the arts and economic prosperity as a state. We were able to bring in 5 study partners from around the state to help us out, and that was pretty significant as well. We're treating the study as a baseline. The Maine Arts Commission does get this year about $741,000 from the National Endowment for the Arts that we then match with state money that then goes out for reinvestment in the arts. So I just kind of wanted to give you that as a sort of baseline for where the Maine Arts Commission is at in the state. Maine is also the most rural and least densely populated state east of the Mississippi. The most rural and least densely populated state. So when people start talking about rural states around the country, they don't think of Maine. They think of Kansas and Nebraska and South Dakota. And we quite often get left out of the rural conversation. But Maine's woods and waters and our natural beauty have long attracted visitors from throughout the world, including artists and writers from Winslow Homer and Andrew Wyeth to Longfellow and Thoreau. Needless to say, cultural tourism is an important economic driver, and tourism in general is our largest industry. In fact, last year, 35 million tourists came to Maine, which is probably why your niece moved to Portland. It's a huge attraction right now for the millennials, and it was named one of the 10 hippest cities in the country a few years ago. Nowhere is the creative economy more alive and well than in the small rural towns throughout our state. Belfast, Maine is one of the best examples of how arts and culture helped turn this town of 6,600 people around. Not all that long ago, Belfast was known more for its chicken farms and the challenges that presented than anything else. Belfast is situated on the Maine coast in the region between the wealthy mid-coast and down East Maine. In 2000, things began to change for Belfast. That year, a group of local artists gathered to create an art center amongst 3 waterfalls in the rural neighborhood of Montville, Maine. The result was Waterfall Arts. Their mission was to create community in harmony with nature through the transformative power of the arts. Many of those artists had been graduates of the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, which is also a place where Louise Nevelson has spent a lot of time. A lot of famous artists have spent a lot of time at the Skowhegan School. And those artists that came to Skowhegan quite often would stay in Maine. They wanted to stay in Maine, and this group of artists decided to move to Belfast. 6 years later, after successfully building their following in programs, Waterfall Arts purchased the 1935 Governor Anderson School in Belfast and expanded their organization to include artist studio spaces, 2 galleries, and a performance space. Waterfall Arts became the center of arts and culture in Belfast, which in turn attracted such arts efforts as the Belfast Poet Laureate, town of 6,600 people with a poet laureate floored me the first time I heard about it. Public art on the waterfront, the Maine Farmland Trust Gallery, the Belfast Book Festival, the Belfast Farm and Art Market, and the All Roads Music Festival, and more. This in turn attracted new non-arts businesses and culinary entrepreneurs, as well as the Front Street Shipyard, which has been expanding and adding more and more jobs year in and year out. And they moved there specifically because of the vibrancy in that community. In 2012, Waterfall Arts spearheaded another collaboration in partnership with local government leaders and local businesses in receiving a Maine Arts Commission Creative Economy Grant with support from the NEA. And through this effort, the Belfast Creative Coalition was formed. The BCC's mission is to provide an ongoing voice for artists, organizations, and creative entrepreneurs. BCC founded the annual Cultivate Farm and Arts Tour, which connects agriculture with arts and culture. They coordinate the First Friday Art Walks. They coordinate marketing efforts on behalf of the region. And they are now leading a community-wide cultural planning effort to expand the arts in Belfast with full support of city leaders who are deeply involved and invested in the process. In fact, the city's economic development director is leading that process. Belfast, led by the BCC, was a study partner for AEP 5. Their impressive 41% participation rate shows an economic impact of almost $8 million for that region, an incredible impact for such a rural area. This story of Belfast is just one of several creative economy stories I could tell about the power of the arts in Maine. And quite often, the creative economy grants provided by the Maine Arts Commission are the catalyst needed to make this happen. The arts and increased funding for the NEA are more than worth the investment, and I think we should take that $13 billion that nonprofit arts industry generates and reinvest that in the NEA. That's my idea. Thank you very much.